we are live once again. You are listening to the Solvable Mysteries Podcast. My name is Juras. As every week, I'm joined by my co-host, Glenn Highcove. How are you doing, man?
Hey, doing all right. Interested in talking about some disturbing stuff today, I guess. And with this case, it's going to be
It's very
quite
disturbing.
interesting to see. Yeah, to compare notes and see what each of us thinks happened in this case.
Yeah, definitely. So, without any further ado, today we have chosen to take another look at the Timmothy Pitzen case. This young boy that you are seeing on the visuals, if you're watching this on our YouTube platform, which we do have. If you just go to YouTube and type Solvable Mysteries Podcast, you will find all of our visual stuff there. Pretty much, Timmothy Pitzen was born in Aurora, Illinois, to parents James Pitzen and Amy Joanne Mary Fry Pitzen. No, that's a long name. That's a lot. Now I'm reading the script because I was referring to her as Amy Fry Pitzen. But now that I've just read Amy Joanne Mary Fry Pitzen, oof, that's something right there. And pretty much this young boy is still missing to this day, and the circumstances of his disappearance, I would say, are it's right up there in terms of creepiness for me personally, and just how dark I think the situation happened, because there are different theories to what actually happened to Timothy, and I feel like mine are leaning towards the darker side. I'm not sure how you are leaning towards, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna find out throughout the podcast. But I guess give us your initial take on the whole case without obviously giving too much away, because we want to keep a steady flow for this podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm right with you. I don't have super optimistic predictions for what happened to Timothy.
Right. So I guess before we get into the whole situation of his disappearance and the events that happened prior to him disappearing, I think we should talk a little bit about his family, his parents, pretty much. So I just have a few more pictures of Timothy right here. So as you can see, he was just your average boy. You know what I mean? He didn't seem to be. Seemed in all of his pictures, he seemed really happy. Actually, you know what I mean? Like the interesting thing, I don't think I've seen a picture where he was not smiling. So that would actually indicate to me that he was a happy kid, right? I mean, did you find any indication that this boy had any family issues when he was growing up? Because man, obviously the parents had their own issues that we will discuss, but it just seemed that his upbringing was like pretty good, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, he was so young, so I guess it was a little bit early in his life. But yeah, I mean, I think we know whatever kind of chaos was going on in his life, it didn't seem to bleed over to how he was perceived in, let's say, the academic environment or even by relatives. There were no bad reports, let's say.
Right. So, as I've mentioned before, Timothy Pitzen, he was born in Aurora, Illinois, and his parents pretty much had Timothy in 2004. And well, he has disappeared on May 11th on 2011. So that would make him 6 years of age at the time of his disappearance. I believe he just started attending elementary school. Is that correct? Or was he doing it prior?
I think that's like right around kindergarten or first grade, depending on how early they put him in there. The only other schooling he would have had was maybe if he'd done like preschool or daycare, but that's about it.
Right. Another interesting fact about this family, well, Amy Fry Pitzen, the mother of Timothy, she actually had Now, don't quote me on this because I didn't focus too much I didn't in my research. I didn't focus too much into these details, but I believe she had multiple marriages before that had fallen apart in a pretty bad way that left her depressed, right?
Yeah, it sounds like she had some history of even suicide attempts, and I don't know. I mean, when I look at her photo, I don't get just about. Yeah, I don't get. This isn't. Someone will say, "Oh, well, you're stereotyping somebody, or you're getting a." No, there's interesting. Just as a side note, there's some interesting studies where, like they do studies where the people that are hostile or angry, they'll do like kind of like studies with random people where they'll take someone who's an angry person and they'll have them smile. So they'll do a bunch of photos of them smiling, and then they'll show those photos to people that don't know them, and they'll mix them in with like a control group of people who aren't angry people. And it's interesting that your average person can actually pick out the angry person even when they're not angry in the photo. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, yeah. Isn't that,
It doesn't only make sense to me, but like, oh my god, I never thought about it in this way. Like, where do you get
yeah.
these research reports, man?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think it was one of those psychology publications. Like I used to read an RSS feed or that stuff. But yeah, like I think she's a good case in point where I look at her, and I mean there's nothing, there's nothing like necessarily weird about her photos. She looks
Yes.
like just a normal human being, you know. And on paper, I guess if you were like an alien coming to our culture and just knew what a smile was, you'd say, "Oh," but I don't know if it is something about the way her eyes are in the photos. She looks like she's kind of like scowling a little bit. I mean, I think anybody listening to the podcast version of this, I definitely encourage you to look up the Wikipedia and look up, like just do a Google image search
Or go to
for
our
her.
YouTube page.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go to our YouTube page and decide for yourself. Like just try to be agnostic about it. Try to be neutral, but just look at her. And I like when I look at photos of her, and then I hear about the psychological history, and then what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not super surprised. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think you've already alluded to what may have happened to Timothy right here. Now, I'm not gonna allude just yet because there are various theories on what happened to Timothy that we must talk about, but the only person that we have not mentioned so far of the Pitzens family was the father of Timothy, who was James Pitzen. This is the man, this is James right here in this picture. Now he seems to me like the most I would have said like average person ever, but like at the same time, now that I look at these pictures, this picture in particular, I think, man, I don't know, he looks interesting as well, but I think it's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
I think that's because I've just seen some YouTube videos on this case where they used this picture in a really creepy manner, where they were like zooming in on his eyes and the background music was really dark. I'm probably gonna do the same thing in post production, so oops. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like I said, I mean, some of it is obviously he's in a state of grief here.
yeah,
When they, what I mean, they take these photos, so maybe they're not catching him at his best moment versus the other pictures we saw of the mother where, yeah, like, she's smiling. She's supposed to be like at her best in those photos. He's not really assumed to be at his best here, but yeah, I mean, he doesn't look like I don't know, he doesn't look super nurturing. Something about those eyes turned me off a little bit.
right.
Make me feel a little weird. Yeah.
I mean, but we are not, I guess, psychics or anything like that to read people's faces. So we are just gonna continue
Yeah,
on
yeah.
with the facts, right? So let's jump into the actual disappearance. So now, this was really weird. Timothy's father had dropped Timothy at his kindergarten class at Greenman Elementary School, and then all of a sudden his mother checked him out of class between 8:10 and 8:15 CDT. So basically right after, right? That would have to be
Yeah.
right after. So hold up. That would mean that she was potentially following them to the
Yeah.
elementary school. What?
Or waiting right nearby, like maybe waiting literally for him to leave and just giving it like a little bit of a cushion. You know what I mean? Like giving it a good 10, 15 minutes. Like, okay, he's not coming back because he forgot the lunchbox or whatever.
Right.
And then, and it's a kindergarten class. So, probably kids kids are kind of wandering in a little bit late sometimes too. So maybe she's just giving a little bit of cushion. But yeah, that's like literally school starts at 8.
God damn.
8 a.m. So
God damn.
yeah.
So this was planned. So all of a sudden we have to put the time stamp right here. This has been planned. It had to have been, This wasn't like all of a sudden Amy Fry Pitzen decided to go and take him out of class. She planned this for a while. Now we're gonna move on in the story. She takes Timothy and first of all, she drops her vehicle off at a repair shop at 10 a.m. So basically 2 hours after the fact, like a little bit less than 2 hours later, they're in the repair shop. So the repair shop was definitely not a 2-hour drive away from the, I guess, school. So what were they doing those 2 hours? The following events that we will describe, I would think, entails that they probably were going to an ice cream store or something like that. Something that Timothy would really like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she was probably spoiling Timothy in those 2 hours, I believe. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, maybe doing some kind of breakfast, something nice. Yeah, grabbing. I mean, here's the thing with any kid of any age, but especially a young kid, like their blood sugar is real fragile. You know what I mean? Like you go from like everything's fine to like I'm hungry and you need to feed me. So you almost like start scheduling your day around that.
See, I don't have kids, so I have no idea
what
this is all about.
You got to, I mean, especially depending on the kid, like you got to be, and kids are like, it's because they're growing. They're like, especially that age, like I remember in elementary school, it's like, I feel like you're eating like every 2 hours. Like you eat for breakfast, then you get to school, then it's like recess time, you're eating again, then it's lunch, you're eating again. And then like by the time you get out of school, you're like starving again.
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense. Because now thinking back, because I was a child not like super long ago, so I could sort of reminiscent on those like same events. But yeah, maybe that's what it was. So later on, they so basically the employee of this shop, the repair shop, they drove both Fry Pitzen and Timothy Pitzen to a Brookfield Zoo. Now this is where the Google Maps on our visual end of the podcast here on YouTube comes into place. Now I have made a project on the Google Earth for this, I guess, whole event, so we could just jump through all of the, I guess, places on this map that they essentially went to. So it all started at this Greenman Elementary School that you can see right now. It seemed like a pretty average elementary school, nothing too out of the ordinary. As I've said, they drove to the repair shop. I couldn't find the location of this repair shop, but as I've said before, I definitely believe it was in the same city, so they could not have actually spent the whole 2 hours driving to this place, right? But then we have the Brookfield Zoo. Now, the Brookfield Zoo is a little bit further away from the school, so I'm thinking maybe this was a precautionary act on Amy's side, just to make sure that her plan that we will develop in this podcast soon enough goes smoothly. and let's say James Pitzen, once he finds out that Timothy is not in his class anymore, he doesn't find them that easily, you know. They actually took the time to drive to the zoo, or maybe Timothy just really liked the zoo, who knows, right?
No, I mean that's funny. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you're right. That's like a like almost a precautionary period where she had like a deniable excuse. So she's like, oh well, because already she has this reputation for doing sort of impulsive things, and things are not super steady in their marriage. Maybe she's like, like you said, if all of a sudden for some reason they did what they're supposed to do and called the dad, she would have been like, oh well, we thought we'd go to the zoo, and then it doesn't look that nefarious, right? Just like, oh well, she was just overstepping her bounds or doing something, a little bit manic maybe.
Right. So following that, they spent some time at the zoo, I believe. Now, after they, I guess, do their zoo activities, right, they return and retrieve their vehicle at this shop that they've left for repairs at 3 p.m. So they arrive at the Brookfield Zoo at around 11 a.m. and then they leave for the vehicle that they've left for 3 p.m. So I'm thinking 4 hours at the zoo. The only thing that jumps out to me is 4 hours at the zoo. Really? Maybe you have some nice zoos, because the one we have here, we have like, if you're lucky, you're gonna see an old ass giraffe, and maybe you're gonna see some squirrels. That's just about what we have here in Eastern Europe, Lithuania. But maybe in Brookfield Zoo, you have some more things to do. I don't know.
Let's see that map again of it. I'm just trying to compare it with like
It's a big zoo, man. It's like, oh my god.
Is it pretty zoo? I mean, maybe I'll tell you the Los Angeles Zoo.
Oh,
It's
come
pretty
on.
big.
Spare me the details on the Los Angeles Zoo. I think
Oh my God.
I think I know what you're talking about, man. It's massive.
It's massive, and it's on the side of a hill. So you're like, you could easily spend over. Yeah, you're pretty tired after 4 hours. I mean, their zoo, it looks like it's on a flat area. It doesn't look that big.
Right,
I mean,
you should see our zoo, man. You'd be surprised.
maybe they had like a playground or something, and she was just kind of letting them mess around on it. Yeah, that's all I can think.
It seems like 4 hours just about right. I think they were enjoying themselves for this period of time. Now at 3 p.m. they go and they retrieve the car. So let's jump in on the timeline real quick. They retrieve the car at 3 p.m. Now, why was the car in the repairs? Was she making sure that her future plan, the future developments go according to plan, and nothing pretty much falls apart? So she was hoping that the car won't stall, so that's why she fixed it. Don't you think that could have been the reason? Because it's an odd time to go and fix your car if you're planning the potential disappearance of your son.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can't really. I mean, it's in all the cases you and I have covered, I don't think we've ever seen somebody do something so proactive. Let's say, right?
Right.
Like, like a super. Usually they're prepared with everything else, but not like bringing their car in for a maintenance.
Right. Exactly. Now we're gonna jump on to the next point on this map. So after they retrieve their car, they drive to the, I hope I pronounced this correct, Key Lime Cove Resort in Gurney. So I'm just really hoping that was correct. But the location is, whoa, this is a drive, man. This is a drive. They definitely took their time.
What's the distance?
Man, I believe it's like it's in the hundreds of miles, man. I mean, it's like over 100 miles, I believe. So,
oh wow.
Yeah. So they took some driving time, and no wonder basically there is no information on when they arrived to the scene, but I think we have a CCTV footage from this location right here. Now I'm just gonna play it right here. We could look through it. Obviously it's CCTV footage. It does not have any audio, so we can talk over it. Now you can see Fry, Pitzen, and Timothy now entering what seems to be a elevator room, I believe, or maybe those were the stairs. Now we are seeing them at the cash register at this resort. Now you can see Timothy's head just peeked out of this other man's shoulder, and you know what I think is super creepy? Timothy does not know what his beloved mother has in store for him. Now I think that's super creepy, because whichever theory that you follow, I mean, Amy Fry Pitzen was involved, so whatever we're gonna discuss shortly, she was involved one way or another, and Timothy had no idea. You know, it was, for him it was like, this is the best day of my life. Mom's buying me ice cream. We just went to the zoo. Now we're gonna go to the resort, and I don't have to do kindergarten homework. Oh my god, this is amazing, but at the same time, whoa.
Yeah, it's like this, I wonder how she explained what was going on. One thing that I kind of jumps out at me in the other videos before we get on to you know, what happened next was look how she's keeping him pretty close, right? Like, she's not letting him wander around, you know what I mean? Like, even in this lobby footage, she's like, you know, she's got him by the hand and, you know, kind of leading him around, controlling the situation. And then at the check-in desk, like, he's right there next to her, right? He's not like off wandering around.
It's almost like Gypsy Rose situation right here.
Just yeah, I mean, just at least doing that, like, kind of controlling mother thing, which is normal for sure. I mean, especially given some of the stuff we've covered with people disappearing. It's just it just makes me want, I guess, when we contrast that with what happens later, I guess it makes it all the more glaring, right? Exactly. Like, who's missing? Yeah.
Right. So that's a good point. She does seem, look how she's turning around. She's like, it's almost like, obviously she might be looking at some other things, but it's almost like she's searching if James is not around. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So that's pretty much their other location. Now we're jumping back to the Google Maps here, and we're gonna be talking about the other locations as well. So the next morning, so I'm assuming they spent the night in this resort. Now I'm not really sure what you do in this resort. I think I have a picture. So this is the Key Lime Cove. Oh, it's another water resort. It seems like a big time water resort with like slides actually protruding out of like, oh my god, out of the walls. So
it's awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh, I think we have those. I think we have those in Latvia. I think I've been on one of these when I was a kid, but it looks great. It looks amazing. It looks like almost like a, as you've said before, a hotel type water park situation. So they probably spent the night there. And let's jump to the next event. So the next morning, the pair drove to Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells. So they went to this place. Now, talk about having the best time of your life if you're a 6-year-old, right?
So yeah, I mean, even now, I think I'll do it.
Right? But like for a 6-year-old, this seems like an amazing time, you know? And I wonder if Timothy at this point was getting suspicious, you know? Because this is super out of the ordinary, you know? What is happening right now? Your mother is taking you on all of these amazing water parks, the zoo. She's buying you like candy. She's buying him clothes. Buying him toys. There was like a truck toy that she bought him. So buying toys, buying clothes, water parks, zoo, probably unlimited amount of ice cream whenever you want. This is, I don't know, man. This
you gotta figure he's gotta be like, what's the catch? Like why are the normal rules suspended?
Right. So
Yeah.
Uh, Basically, we have the footage. I don't know if I have it in the visual assets, but there's this footage at this Kalahari resort, so at this second water park resort, where Fry Pitzen and Timmothy Pitzen are at the checkout line at 10 a.m. and the next day. Now, this is where I've talked to you a little bit about prior to recording this episode. This is where the Wikipedia, I think, messed up the timeline. Now, the Wikipedia states essentially that after they got done doing stuff at this water park, this is the last time Timothy was seen or heard from ever again. But that is actually incorrect, because 3.5 hours, so that's like 3 hours and 30 minutes later on in the day, Timothy's voice was actually heard in the phone calls that were made by Fry Pitzen to her family members as well as relatives, stating that Timothy is okay and we're all fine. And actually, this is what's gonna baffle me the most. Some of the relatives actually stated that they spoke with Timothy. So why is this information A, not on Wikipedia, and then B, mostly not even on YouTube? Because I feel like a lot of people actually glossed over this little detail, because I wish I had more information on what Timothy was actually saying to these family members and relatives. Was he in shock? Was he afraid? Because this is a pretty important detail, because now this is the last time Timothy was actually heard. So if someone spoke to Timothy at 1:30 p.m. on that day, that would mean that that person is the last person to speak to Timothy, not people at like this water park or whatever, the person who's actually on the phone with Timothy. So it's a hazy situation. The details are definitely hazy, but I feel like going deep into the details is what we have to do right here. And I feel like since they messed it up on the Wikipedia page, this case brings about a lot of confusion. Now I'm gonna go back to the Google Maps. Now, as you can see, I did a little bit of work prior to recording, and we're gonna jump from the Key Lion Cove Resort, the first water park resort, to the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin. Now, where is this place? Oh, it's here, man. You seen this? I feel like this is a whole bunch of time to spend just driving, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, I didn't even realize, because I zoomed out of the map a little bit. I was like, oh my god, did I forget to map Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells? And I was like, nope, it's right there. It's right there in the whole nother state almost. So they took some time driving. And now, why I actually mentioned the fact that Wikipedia messed up the timeline. The phone call that was made on, I guess, 1:30 p.m. on the day of Timothy's disappearance, it actually has been tracked. It actually has been tracked to the Rock Falls area. So you are now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you could pretty much start to gauge, I guess, the route here. So this is the phone call around this area. So what this actually pretty much states that from Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells up to Rock Falls, so I assume they drove in a pretty straight line, don't you think? Right. Down. Timothy was still alive, or not disappeared yet. So at Rock Falls, somewhere around the Rock Falls area, this is actually the last time Timothy has been heard from. So not at the water park resort. Timothy was still well and all good for at least a few more hours while they were driving. Now, the interesting detail here is that some of the family members that were talking to Amy Fry Pitzen on the 1:30 p.m. phone calls, they actually stated that they heard Timothy saying that he was hungry. But now that you've actually explained to me that young children actually get hungry on random like occasions all of a sudden, so that would make sense. I mean, it's a stereotypical "mom, I'm hungry" situation, right?
Yeah, they're always, especially if there's like any chance of getting sugar, because sugar is like sugar is to children what heroin is to to addicts. Yeah, they like someone who's not hungry, they get a chance to get something sugary. Oh yeah, I'm hungry now.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's continue on. So this is it. This is pretty much it. Rock Falls, somewhere near Rock Falls. This is the last time Timothy is seen now. This is where, oh man, when you really imagine yourself like watching the situation unfold somewhere like by the side of like, I don't know, like, just in general, if you were there, just imagine what happened next. So at 7 7:25 p.m. So the phone calls were made at 1:30 p.m. and now at 7:25 p.m. Fry Pitzen was seen alone. So there's no Timmy anymore on security cameras at a family door store in Winnebago. So what's the time gap here? I believe that's 6 hours. So you could just imagine what happened those 6 hours, and those 6 hours are pretty much the case,
Right.
Right. So in Winnebago, so I have them marked here, so we could jump on the map to the family door stores in Winnebago. So at 8 p.m. she was sighted at the Sullivan food store in Winnebago, once again unaccompanied by Timothy, or anyone by that matter. Now she was buying notes. She was buying notes, I believe, also letter envelopes as well, to leave some notes. Now, let's not jump into what those notes entailed just yet.
Not foreshadow it. Yeah.
I mean, I think people might start to have ideas now on this, our audience, but let's just keep the suspense for a few more moments. Now, the interesting part here, because I'm so focused on the time stamps, I guess. So she goes to the family store in Winnebago, so this place right here at 7:25 p.m. and there's like camera footage capturing her. Now this is her entering that store. As you can see, her clothes are a little bit different than the day prior, because she was wearing that white t-shirt, and I believe she was wearing pants. Now I'm not certain, let's check. Yeah, she was wearing a white t-shirt and pants.
Oh
now,
yeah. But then
mm-hmm.
at the resort, at the check-in desk, I feel like she was wearing that dark shirt for keep going, and then at the desk I feel like she was wearing a big dark, that's why I didn't recognize her at first.
Wait. This is the other footage, man. This is the other footage.
Yeah, right there. See? She's got that big dark shirt on.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Same shirt, that's a little weird to not change your clothes. I mean, I'm that's not stereotype, but I mean, I know a lot of my, let's say, family members who are women or girls like to change their clothes. Even I do, though I'm a little worse about it. Definitely, I'm more, especially these days with the lockdown. Yeah. These, but yeah, like it is a little, you just think they were just at the zoo all day, and then they were at the resorts for a couple days in a row, and I don't know. It just seems like that's boy. Maybe she planned out the car repair, but not the change of clothes.
But is this the same black shirt? Now this black shirt has a distinction in front of, like on the front part of the shirt, like
it has like
a sign,
a phrase on it.
Right. Let's
What's
jump.
it say?
I have no idea, but I think it's the same phrase. It's the same phrase. It's the same shirt. It's the same shirt.
Yeah.
So the next day she was wearing the same exact shirt. Yep, and we could now definitely. Crap! I almost missed this detail. If you could see it on the timestamp on this still, this is on the 05/13th, and the video that we just watched is on the 05/12th. So yep, she was
like
wearing
3 o'clock. Yeah.
Right. So she was wearing the same shirt for more than 24 hours. Now that might have been her work shirt, because she might have put in that work. But yeah.
Right.
So let's jump back to the map real quick. So what I was gonna say is that the first family food store that she went at 7:25 p.m. on the day of Timothy's disappearance, and on the second one that is like right by the first one at 8 p.m. So either A, she spent almost half an hour at the first family dollar store in Winnebago, or she may have done some weird stuff somewhere in between.
In between, huh?
Right.
Yeah. That's suspicious.
Any ideas?
Yeah, I'm gonna sit on my idea for a second, but
Perfect.
Yeah, and wait, and just to be clear, the second stop is when she started buying all the stationery and stuff, right? All the
I believe
letters,
so. I believe so.
making materials. Okay.
Sullivan Food Store
Gotcha.
in Winnebago. Yeah, the second store that she went to, she was actually acquiring those for, say, letters or envelopes, stuff like that. Now, let's jump to 11:15 p.m. on that same day. So we are now jumping 3 hours and 15 minutes into the timeline. She checked into the Rockford Inn, basically in Rockford, which makes sense, where sometime that night or the next morning, she took her own life by slashing her wrists and neck and taking an overdose of
Histamines.
antihistamines. Right.
Yeah, so like that was the part I was kind of. Did you ever find? I was trying to find out, but unfortunately, it was just the Wikipedia just had like a link to like some newspaper article from a billion years ago. I was trying to figure out what antihistamines someone would take to do that, because by antihistamines they mean like Benadryl or something like that, like allergy medicine basically. So allergy medicine is known to make you sleepy, especially Benadryl. Benadryl is used for a bunch of sleep aids. I will tell you that NyQuil, one of the ingredients in NyQuil and other cough medicines for nighttime cold cough medicine, one of the ingredients is a different antihistamine. Usually it also has Tylenol and things like that in there. But so I was like, wow, it's kind of an odd way to do it. You know what I mean? I don't know. I guess I'm used to people like taking like a bunch of painkillers or Tylenol, some other kind of like highly toxic way to do it. It sounds like she was successful, but I mean, she picked two methods at once, right? I guess to kind of
it's almost like three methods. That's the thing. Now we're like watching at the place of her suicide. So this is the Rockford Hill. Now I'm not sure if the people down at Rockford Hill will condone of our, I guess, sponsorship right here, but it is what it is. She took 3 precautions. She like did 3 things, I believe, because like the slashing of the wrists is one thing, taking pills is another thing, but slashing your throat, come on, man, that's a whole nother thing. For me, I could see a suicidal person taking pills. I could see a suicidal person slashing their wrist, but cutting your throat, this is some next level stuff right here.
And then it makes you wonder. Let's almost take note of that, because that's someone that's, well, and historically we don't know how she tried to kill herself before, but we know that
I know
it is sort of a known fact.
I know how. Do you know? She, on one occasion, she, according to some family members, she went to the park that had a cliff, a really big cliff. She took a whole bunch of pills. She passed out and somehow fallen off the cliff, but she had survived. It was something along those lines.
Wow. So it's someone who's been willing to show, I mean, obviously any kind of suicide attempt is a form of violence against yourself, but it's like actual, like, I don't know, like, I don't know if I was going to off myself, I don't know if I would have the guts to do it that way, to cut into my own wrists or arms, etc. Like
But your neck,
it's yeah, your neck or anything like. I mean, my gosh, that's
wrists.
so like
That's the point I'm making. Wrists, I can see.
yeah,
I can see someone cutting into their wrists. I can actually see someone getting a gun and shooting themselves in the head as well. Like, that's pretty
right.
straightforward. Now, I've heard horror stories where people attempt suicide, they
Yeah, it
shoot
doesn't
themselves,
work.
and it
Yeah,
doesn't. Whoa, what then, boy?
it's
But
horrible.
yeah,
Yeah,
but then again, cutting your own neck, it's insane. But maybe she just made those small cuts, because the cutting of the neck, now I have this image in my head from, like, let's say horror movies, when the bad guy just like slashes someone's throat like really violently. That probably was
and it
not the case, right?
goes geysering out. I mean, I guess my point in it, when I kind of focus on that or dwell on it, is
Yes.
someone's willing to do that to themselves, then what does that mean about them being willing to do it to someone else they care about?
Goddamn, that's a perfect, I guess, I don't know how to
Segue
say
there, yeah.
segue. That's a perfect segue because I have the last, I guess, timestamp, or like, I'm sorry, the last point on this Google Earth map that I have prepared. Now, this is gonna be the Mount Carroll. Now, why I have marked Mount Carroll, this is really interesting. Her phone was actually retrieved by a random person who have kept this phone for themselves, strangely enough, and used it as their own cell phone, or like for a family member, something like that. And they found it at Mount Carroll, I believe in 2013, so around 2 years later. So now you can start to see the bigger picture here, man. If you look at the map, Rock Falls, the place where Timothy's voice was last heard, and Mount Carroll is pretty nearby, and her phone was found in this area. So Timothy disappeared and vanished somewhere here. You just have to agree with that at this point, because the phone, she threw the phone, she may have just, I don't know, for some reason thrown the phone out.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Like, what do you think?
Yeah.
Let's sanity check this for a second in terms of,
Yep.
well, even though the person's doing an insane thing, let's try it anyway. So I was trying to think, like, what was the rationale doing that? And then if you were going to do something, I guess I'm trying not to give away too much about what we're talking about, but if you were going to do something that you wanted to hide, would you throw away your phone in the same place you did the thing? Does that make sense? You know what I mean? If you knew that eventually there was some chance of them finding the phone, and that the phone might be a clue as to what you were doing there, or doing something, it's almost like our
Right.
last episode with the Jameson family, when we were kind of
Right.
trying to triangulate where things were found versus where they were found, to
Yes.
try to tease out some motive. I guess it's kind of strange to be like, let's just leave out what happened to Timothy for a second. Just herself. Like, you're gonna go kill yourself in a hotel room. Something's happened to your kid. They're gonna find you. Why? I almost wonder, like, why throw out your phone at all? Why not just bring it with you? Because you're gonna get found anyway, unless for some reason she had any like apprehension that she might change her plan. You know what I mean? Like, if there was any chance maybe that she was gonna had a
Yeah.
plan B somewhere. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that she basically, I don't know if it's a good time to get into the details, but
Yeah.
or the theories. Well, since we have covered this pretty much the case, I think we can just jump to the theories. And now, before I actually answer your question, I have to sort of give my theory. Now, I think we're just around 45 minutes in, so I think this is a good time to actually start talking about the theories before our audience gets exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you a theory that you've probably never considered, man. This is gonna be a shocker, right? she killed Timothy somewhere in between the 1:30 p.m. and 7:25 p.m. on that day, hid his body, and then committed suicide. So, I mean, you probably didn't expect
Yeah,
that one,
yeah.
right?
Well, no,
So,
no, I mean, yeah, no. Well, I think, yeah, we're both kind of leaning in that direction. But then, so wait, just for timing, just for our audience, for both me and the audience, how does that align with her last stop there at the dollar store getting station? Is that before or after the dollar store?
that's before. That's
Okay.
what the 1:30 p.m. is the phone
Yeah.
calls made time,
Okay.
and the 7:25 p.m. is when she's at the store. So from 1:30 p.m. to 7:25 p.m., no one knows what she was doing. No one knows where Timothy is. No one knows what happened in this time frame, in this, I mean, time space. So, what I believe happened, she killed Timothy. Now, I'm going to be leaning pretty heavily towards this theory. And now, how am I going to explain your question that you gave me prior? Why would she throw the phone? Why would she not casually leave the phone with herself at her
Yeah.
suicide spot in the Rockford Inn in Rockford? Well, I believe that was the case because she did leave those notes, suicide notes, and in those suicide notes, she stated that Timothy's okay. In one of the notes, I believe to her mother, she stated that Timothy is with a family that will love him and will take care of him, something along those lines. Now, if you leave that type of a note, also she mentioned that Timothy loves you. So if you leave that type of a note, that would sort of entail that you are trying to make your family members not realize that you've killed Timothy. So if you're trying to make it look like Timothy is actually all well and he's now living somewhere else, and she also stated that he will never be found, I feel like at that point you do take precautions. Now, is it well thought out precaution to throw out your
Huh.
phone? Yeah, maybe it would not give out any information, but then again, Amy Fry Pitzen was not an expert in murders or these types of things, so she was just casually throwing the phone out. She was like, I need to throw everything out. Like, let's throw this
Do you,
phone out at Mount Carroll.
do you think they were worried? I mean, one thing I guess maybe this should have been more obvious to me when I asked the question. When I just sort of almost I was like, oh, why didn't I think of it? Now that you put it this way, do you think it was also that she was worried about getting stopped? Like, if for some reason, I think as we get into this,
Right.
it's going to be kind of one of the questions is why the heck wasn't there some kind of Amber Alert or like a more concentrated effort? I guess we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, like, do you think it was like she was worried that, oh, maybe they can track me by my phone,
Yeah.
which they
I
should
think,
have. And then she was like, maybe
yeah.
they'll stop me before I can die
Right.
and then get it out of me somehow.
Right. That's a good point, man. That's actually, I didn't even think about it in that sense, and I think you've made a really great point here. I think that definitely could have been the case as well. So, man, I don't have anything to add to that cell phone situation. Right. So, where do we want to move the podcast now? I think we should get into the theories. I feel like it's about time we do so, and I think we'll
Yeah.
just finish up around that 1 hour and 30 mark if we start here. So, I know you have prepared some interesting facts in the script for us for this case, and before we get into those details, I feel like what are your theories? What are you leaning towards the most here?
Yeah, I think I'm leaning the more towards, what you and I both say that both think or we've both kind of shaded some of our statements this way that, her behavior and then, I think especially what's glaring is the fact that she shows up alone on those later videos. So like someone might think, oh, okay, she either left him in the car and went in without him, and she doesn't seem like that kind of mom. Whatever she did, from the other videos, it looks like while she still had him alive and in her custody, he was in her custody. Like he was there with her, hand in hand. So, I think it's pretty safe to assume that by the time we see that dollar store footage, like he's no longer in her custody, whatever that means. So I think that you and I both think that probably means that as a vengeful parent, as somebody who was willing to kill herself, as somebody who was having a acrimonious split with her husband, and as somebody who potentially may have been willing to do something very selfish and spiteful to her spouse, for whatever reasons. Here's something that's worth kind of backtracking on for a second. Is,
my thoughts exactly. We forgot about it.
It's interesting because, look, I know it's embarrassing, right? Like this poor dad, like he doesn't really want his whole personal life. Like, you go into a relationship with somebody and there's no warning label, right? You don't necessarily know all this stuff about somebody. And, even we have a lot of motivations to get in relationships with people, and people change over time. And, when obviously, you're ideally at the start of your relationship, you're seeing the best of each other, and maybe you're kind of overlooking faults. And, it's probably a pretty good chance that he didn't really know what he was getting into. Maybe, when you start dating somebody, doesn't mean that their family is going to tell you, oh, by the way, here's every bad thing that ever happened. And then if they do, well, like the person you're dating could easily turn that around and say, hey, just so you know, my family's crazy, or they hate me, or whatever, or they abuse me, blah, blah, blah. So, okay. But I guess that being said, it would be interesting to understand, like, why the mom, given that they were having some kind of major problems in their relationship, she was showing, from what I've heard in the YouTube, some major emotional instability. And, I guess there was a chance something like this might happen. I don't understand why the school didn't also call him, like why she was allowed to take him out. And maybe that has to do, maybe there's state laws and stuff that impact, and I'm just out of the loop as far as the reality for how that state works or how that school system works. But I feel like at a lot of places there's protections against a parent doing something like this in the case where there's kind of custody issues, and it sounds like he's the one that had custody of the child. So it's a little weird. And even the timing, right? Like you said, it's like like the school just started. It seems pretty, like, why the heck would you bring the kid to school only to take them out 10 minutes later? That doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
I just want to quickly jump in here and just state that Amy Fry Pitzen actually said to the, I guess, teachers or whatever, that there was a family emergency.
Right. Which I don't know. I mean, I get it. I mean, it is like everyone's busy in the morning, so I get they're like not overly thinking through it, what's going on, and like nobody wants to have like a big power trip ego battle with the mom that's trying to take her kid out of school. But I guess I don't know if they weren't informed. It sounds like they weren't informed of sort of this embarrassing personal stuff going on in the relationship there. And maybe, who knows, maybe the dad, maybe he was trying to kind of ride it out and hope that it would smooth over. I mean, things change, but yeah. So anyways, there's that. But then at some point he knew that the child was gone. And I feel like this is an era when when Amber Alerts definitely existed, or the equivalent.
I think so.
So I don't really understand how she's kind of riding around on safari for a couple days in a row.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
She's talking to family. She's having like her own radio show from like, I mean, if it was now, she'd do a podcast. Right. I mean, what was going like kidnapping my kid podcast? So what? Yeah, I don't know. So that part's kind of disturbing to me because I feel like there were some lost opportunities, and I guess that's just my initial thought. Maybe it's worth, even before we get into hash out finally about the whether she killed him, someone might say, hey, so okay, like, so there's all this stuff going on, missed opportunities. She claims, like you said in her suicide note, that she has given him away to people that'll take care of him and he's safe, and don't worry, you'll never find him. So the two things. So one is, what kind of people when I was talking about this with my wife, we were laughing, not laughing at the situation, but just laughing at like how ridiculous it is. I mean, I'm sure that in the old days it was a lot easier to do that, but like now, with social security numbers and like if you just show up with a kid that's not yours here in like, the United States or the EU, I feel like there's going to be a lot of questions asked. Like you can't just show up at like, the doctor's office with a kid that's not yours or a new school system or something. Oh, hey, this is my new kid.
I
Here's
mean,
a receipt.
here in Lithuania, I feel like that could actually fly.
Could it work?
But maybe.
Yeah. I just, you know what I mean? There's this day of like paper trails and red tape and all that. So I don't know. That's just my thought. Like what kind of people would even do that? Like who would she even know? Because we've already ruled out her family, right? Her family, I'm assuming, because I'm assuming like the first thing the cops would do would be look at the family, right? Because this happens all the time. I mean, for sure, she's not the only person to ever kidnap her own kid.
There is an interesting theory that I want to actually mention here, because if I don't mention it right now, I feel like we will just gloss over it. There is a theory circulating in Reddit threads that Amy Fry Pitzen actually had an affair with some other man other than James Pitzen, and that Timothy Pitzen is actually the offspring of that particular man, and that James Pitzen is not the actual father of Timothy. So that would entail, I mean, this theory would sort of lead us to think that either A, she knew, Amy Pitzen knew that James will find out one day, and she just didn't want that to happen. So she either A, killed Timothy and killed herself, or B, gave Timothy to this other man to his genetic father or whatever, like biological father, then killed herself. Or then we backtrack to the first side of this theory, and then it would be that James actually did find out about this thing, that he was not the biological father of Timothy, and Fry Pitzen was really scared because they had those issues before, and actually James Pitzen had threatened her with the fact that since you are bipolar, or like since you have mental issues and whatnot, I will win the custody battle and you will never see Timothy again. So maybe she knew that fact, that she has been threatened by like with these claims before, and now that James finds out that Timothy is actually not the father, he's definitely gonna pull the trigger and take custody. And she was like, I can't deal with this right now, so that's that, and then she, as I've said, did her thing.
That's interesting. I mean, that would maybe be a good reason for why, like I said, not that I totally expect to find out what the arguments were in their relationship, because everything's embarrassing to people, but that would be an interesting explanation for why they're kind of so closed-mouthed about some of what was going on, in the relationship. Okay, so that being said, like I just personally find it really implausible that some other family, couple, other person, I mean, short of like you said, some very extraordinary circumstances, that anybody would ever be willing to put themselves out there and face, federal kidnapping charges.
Oh my God, who wants that?
Yeah. Who wants the FBI up their their butt? So yeah, nobody wants that. So okay, so then we get into what we were talking about, like why would a mother do this? So just real quick, I did a little bit of digging into the topic about mothers that kill their children. It's not a happy topic, but it is a topic that makes the news a lot for us. I think all around the world, and when it happens, it usually makes the news. So it's called fillicide. Fillicide is when a parent kills their child. And it's interesting because there's different categories for it. I mean, there's like people that abuse their children, which doesn't look to be the case here at all with Timothy. Looks like he had, up until this point, a pretty safe upbringing. It's interesting. There's also fathers are actually slightly more likely to be responsible for murders of children 8 or older, while women are responsible for a higher share of children killed during infancy, and some of that is postpartum depression. It is also worth mentioning that
Right.
as disturbing as it is, like
So,
I
so
guess nobody.
just to
Yeah, yeah,
rephrase that fact a little bit. So fathers are more likely to kill their offspring when they are 8 or older, right? And when the child is really young, then the mothers are usually, or I shouldn't say usually, but like statistically more often they do the killing.
more likely. Yeah, I was going to hedge that number a little bit, because I think that men still overall are more likely, and it's not anything against men. Some of it's just literally testosterone and anger. The same things that make men statistically more violent and more likely to be convicted of violent crimes,
Yes.
and murders and things like that is also makes them more likely to, take it out on a family member. But for women, this is kind of a sad fact. I'm sure, when we keep it real here, right? So, infanticide, so killing an infant, that was also a form of birth control, and it still is in some societies, kind of on the outskirts of civilization.
Yikes.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad, but if anyway, without belaboring it, it happens. It happens enough, and there's postpartum depression and other reasons. There's hormonal issues that can make somebody not think clearly or be overwhelmed. So, okay, so there's that. But like, this doesn't necessarily seem to be the case here, right? Because she only had this one kid. Looks like the father was James was willing to take 100% responsibility for the child. So she really inserted herself into the situation. So it's not like somebody that could claim like postpartum or late postpartum depression, or even her depression. She's sort of like intervening here. So then you say, okay,
Right.
well, what are the other reasons why someone does that? And when they looked at this, it was interesting because they did some longitudinal studies in the UK, and they found that, no surprise, 37% of the perpetrators of fillicide had a recorded mental illness at the time. I mean, yeah, no surprise. If you're not well in your head, that might be a reason someone killed their kid, that they're not interacting normally. The most common diagnoses were mood disorders and personality disorders rather than psychosis.
Right.
So, but the latter accounted for 15% of cases. Now, what that, just to break that apart, parse that out a little bit. Psychosis, I think, would say like you were in a state of mind where maybe you could claim you didn't know what you were doing, like in a fugue state or something. Like you could, like almost murder, committing a murder while insane.
Right.
Like something happens and you just lose it, and your mind isn't even connected to your body anymore when you're doing it, at least from your perspective. And then you wake up and you've got your blood all over your hands, and oh my God, what did I do? No, this is like, look, I think that you have made a very compelling case, Juras, that this was premeditated from like the first moment that the plan started unfurling. And this plan was so premeditated that it even had like escape clauses. Like it even had like chances for her to say, hey, if she got caught at the zoo,
If I could, if I could quickly step in here, I will actually even enhance what you're saying right now, because I'm not sure what an iPass is, or if it even is what I'm gonna talk about, but I think her vehicle, Amy's vehicle, had some sort of a system where it was tracking the vehicle's position at various points in time, and sometime before the disappearance of Timmothy Pitzen, she was actually spotted around the system actually showed that the car was around Mount Carroll area. So yeah, I mean, so she was there before it all went down.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, like almost like stalking.
So
Or
she was
like doing reconnaissance.
scoping out the place.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, so someone like that, I would imagine can't claim that they were in a psychotic state of mind and just drove the car off the road or something, right, into the river, like has happened. So I guess as we look at, they focused on it. There was one study that went back to 1969, because obviously this has always been a compelling case. There's always been parents that have done this to their children, and they said there were 5 main motives for filicide. They said it included altruistic, fatal maltreatment, which is, like we said, abuse of the kid, unwanted child, and I think neither of those are the case here. He for sure was wanted, maybe too wanted by the mother, and then spousal revenge. So I actually so it's interesting. I highlighted this in the script. I've heard the altruistic thing before. I've also heard that, interestingly, I have heard that in some cases of people that that have major mental illnesses.
Yes.
There was actually I won't say which show it was, but on a very, very popular radio show here in the United States, one of the main personalities, not the host, but one of the kind of cast of characters that was on and off the show, I remember they actually had to take him off the show because he had a form of mental illness where he cared so much. This is going to sound really, really upside down, but I think it's at least worth considering when we think about this case. He cared so much about the other people on the show that he wanted to kill them so nothing bad would happen to them.
What?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So thinking that it sounds so backwards, but then I guess the thing is, like, when you think like, oh well, something even worse could happen than me gently killing this person. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you could die in a fire, you could die of cancer, somebody could beat you to death. Like, it's a really twisted way of thinking, but it's almost like
I've heard about this. I've definitely heard about these types of situations. I feel like they are really present in, like, I know, horror movies, like some sort of creepy mind movies where it's like the mother's like, I want to protect you from everything, so you have to die,
Yeah, like almost like Carrie in a way. That movie Carrie. I don't know if you've ever seen the '70s version. So it's a form of narcissism, I think. Just my own armchair psychology, but I think it's a form of narcissism because you're basically assuming that only you can give this person the best, and that life without you. So in the case of Amy here, it's like, well, just making the assumption that life without her, she doesn't want to live. She wants to end it. She's tried to end it before. She, I think, in some level wants to punish James. Yeah, and then so she's like, well, and then poor Timothy. I think just I'm going to put you out of your misery because we know life is never going to be as good without me. And then also there's like that. You know what I mean? There's also the spousal revenge part about like, but I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know how. This is something that would be interesting. Maybe it doesn't really matter, but it would be interesting to tease out how much of this is her hostility towards James versus really her hostility to anyone who isn't herself. Because she might be just so self-centered, and so I mean, I guess her family, we don't really get it. The fact that they didn't right away get worried when she did this thing. Right. I kind of get it. I get annoyed two ways, because I get annoyed in a way because it's like, okay, either A, she was always doing crap like this, so they were just like, oh, here she goes again. But then if she was always doing crap like this and she had the kid with her.
This is a no-go. That's a
this
big
is
no-no.
Like a different. Yeah, there's someone that can actually get hurt. So
right, exactly.
Besides her,
I mean, you just made a really compelling case for her mental state, right? And I would actually have to agree with a lot of things that you've said. Probably everything that you've said. I definitely think there was something like that where she did think that she was the only person, that would make Timothy's life happy, and how she made herself believe that even more by giving Timothy all of these things, all of these cool water park trips, clothes, like probably candy and ice cream as well. So she was in her head thinking, look how good of a mother I am, and I'm so much better than James,
And then also it's like, that's interesting because when we were talking about I think you did such a great job of outlining and really tracking because in Wikipedia it doesn't sound as good as what you showed us. So what you showed us is like places that I would like to go to with my family. And it looks like she was trying to give him the best 1 or 2 days of his life.
Yeah.
To only then, you know what I mean? Like, oh, go out on top. I mean,
Shit, goddamn.
as horrible as it is, it's like that's what it kind of looks like she was setting up.
Right. So quickly we have to go through other theories because I feel like you and I are leaning in the same direction at this point pretty much. I think that's pretty obvious, but
Yeah.
what about the theory that now you stated that no one wants those federal charges, right? So first of all, what do you think about the theory that that James was actually not Timothy's father, and then this other person who was the father sort of is raising him in secrecy? Now this is a pretty well written up theory in the Reddit threads, so I just want to get that out of the way. What do you think about it? Like, how credible would that be? And then later on, I think give your own take on the fact that there's this other theory that the Amish community took Timothy. Now, would the Amish just take random kids and raise them just like that? And then there was this one thing that there was a cult in the general facility where Timothy was missing. There was a cult, yes, somewhere around there, and then maybe she gave him to a cult, and then the cult is raising. So there's these three theories. I know you want to like talk a little bit about
react to that a little bit. I mean, I guess for the first one that there was some other father. It's like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like this person, why would they care now? Why would they trust her? I feel like I don't feel like she would have anybody in her life that would at that point care enough and then go out on a limb for her. Does that make sense? So
on
like
a
we
crazy
said,
limb where you get caught, you get jail time.
Yeah, you're going to jail for like 20 years. Yeah, I mean you're going to federal prison. You're not going to like your state lockup. Yeah, it's like, and then reputational hit and everything else. So, yeah, that part I don't really buy. In terms of the Amish, I mean I definitely don't want to slander the Amish. I think someone who says that they might be thinking more of like there were communities in the past that were like the Amish called like Shakers, not Quakers. Quakers are something different, but they're Shakers. Shakers used to exclusively they didn't procreate or have intercourse. So their entire community was founded on adopting children, and this was in an era in the old days. I mean, like 1700s, 1800s, when like it was a more, there was no birth control really, and it was a lot more likely to actually be able to like not take a kid, but like get a kid that nobody wanted.
Right.
And just, but now it's like with all the paperwork and all the people that are looking to adopt and all that, like the Shakers are long gone. I don't see the Amish doing it. I think Amish are pretty upstanding, like they're very religious and, render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, right?
That's what I actually thought about. Like the Amish seem like they're they're a bit creepy, but they seem like they're super nice people when like from everything that I've heard. Another thing is we're watching this homemade video of Timothy, so this is probably somewhere shortly prior to his disappearance. Now, do you see anything odd in this footage? Because I see one thing, and I don't want to like bother you with this question right now because you're probably gonna miss it. He has Spider-Man pajamas. William Tyrrell from Australia also had Spider-Man pajamas on when he went. So it's just
Spider-Man kiss of death.
I don't know, man.
So Spider-Man, don't get your kids Spider-Man pajamas. Or
not to my kids. If I ever have kids,
trouble.
it's no one's wearing Spider-Man in my household. Right. So you made good cases on both of those theories. By the way, the cult, I believe I don't know, man, I didn't really research into the cult. I think it's a reach to state that a cult did it would be a little bit of a reach, so I'm sure you would agree with me. So at this point I'm leaning towards that she did kill her son somewhere between 1:30 p.m. and 7:25 p.m. She did it somewhere around the general facility where the last phone call was made, as we can just quickly go back to the map, to the project. For this case, I think it was Rock Falls was the place where she may have did it. Now I'm looking at the general layout of Rock Falls, the city in Illinois state. Just in general, the whole of Illinois seems like a perfect place to hide the body. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's not urban. It has some water streams. And that the phone was found near Mount Carroll. So she may just went to the woods and just dropped off the dead body of Timothy. So, but just I guess before we finish up the podcast, I think since we're leaning both ways toward this theory, how do you think she killed Timothy?
Yeah, it's interesting because per our earlier comments, the fact that she was willing to get violent with herself in a couple different ways, and then the other odd stuff too, like when you mentioned her drugging herself and then falling, and then like just really aggressively violent ways to do it, and then like I said, you're not a parent yet. With kids, you got to be real careful with there's even a lot of allergy medicines and antihistamines you can't give kids until they're like way older than he was, because it could kill them. It's just, so I could see something that was enough for her to overdose on could also be potentially
just gave
something that she could have
just
give him a bunch. Right. Maybe did that to knock him out and get him in a toxic state and then smother him.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I was wondering is if there was any bodies of water, though that might not be the right move, because then he would probably show up.
Right.
His body would be recovered somewhere downstream.
She stated in the notes that Timothy is never going to be found again. So I think. I think she just put him in a hole or something.
Yeah, the fact that, that's almost like the most ominous part of it, that the person was so sure, because how could you be sure? If you're giving away to a family, why would you say that and not have him turn up, when he's 18 and go, aha, here I am?
I think you do that because you don't want your family members to think that Timothy is dead. I think she really cared for her family members, just maybe excluding James, and then she didn't, because she stated in those suicide notes that she was really sorry for what had happened. She said that she stated to her mother in one of those notes that the mother could have not done anything to prevent this. So she was really trying to make sure that the family members will sort of have as little pain as possible over this, and I guess giving them a sense of hope that Timothy is still out there, and he's trying to be, like just some hope, just some uncertainty. I think that's her sort of last gift, to the family.
And then she died. I wonder again, like how much of that was it really about herself, about her own reputation, about her own, because because at first I thought, well, she's doing this to punish him, but maybe it's more like she doesn't want to go down as a murderer, so she puts this candy wrapping on it. Oh, he's alive. Yeah, sure. You just still never find him.
He's alive, and James made me kill myself, so James is the fault here,
Right. He's the jerk.
Right.
And don't worry, but I'm not a child murderer.
Right. There was this other situation that I think before we sign off we have to mention. There was this thing, I believe in 2019, where there was a new development, quote unquote, in this case, where a 23-year-old, I think, guy who had like issues, like some sort of, he was like in jail for some time or something like that. He was pretending
Yeah.
to be the 14-year-old Timothy, because Timothy at that point would have been 14 and this guy was 23. So we have, I think, we have a mugshot. Yeah, so this is the guy. I don't know his name. I didn't really bother to even look it up that much, but I mean, this guy does not look like he's 20. It's like he's 14. You know what I'm saying? And like the whole
Yeah.
situation where like the father was anticipating, oh my God, we finally found the Timothy. There were like news crews at his house, like news reports, all of this stuff. When this guy clearly was not Timothy. I mean, who are you fooling right now? But
Yeah.
I guess that's just how media works. If they smell money, then they after the money. You know what I mean? So I think that was the case,
Yeah.
and I just really felt bad because the father on those interviews, they actually did interviews prior to DNA testing this guy. So oh my God, they were like, they're gonna test this guy and he might be your son, and he was like all excited. And then obviously this 23-year-old man with a beard is not the 14-year-old boy. And they're like, whoops, he's not your son. Oh, but can you give us another interview now, please? So yeah,
Yeah, and
so
we sold a bunch of ad impressions off of that. Yeah, that's like the sad part about our media is it's like it's not about truth. It's too bad. It almost makes you wonder if he had it makes you wish he had a lawyer or some kind of advisor to let him know, like, hey, dude, why don't you just lay low until
yeah.
like there's nothing to gain by talking to the press at this point. Like, let the press make fools of themselves. Don't also help them make a fool of you.
Right. So I guess I don't know, man. I think it's the perfect time to wrap it up. So anything you want to add before we sign off? I personally felt like this was a great podcast for us, and we actually managed to put in a whole bunch of information in a shorter period of time. I think that should continue on our end to make the podcast more informative and structured rather than just venting casual stuff. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this podcast. I think this new format of keeping it briefer but a lot more immersive is even more fun for me to do, and the post-production will be a lot easier. So yeah,
Yeah.
your final thoughts before we sign off, man?
Yeah, I mean, I really like what you did here with, especially because, like, I think one of the things that's frustrating to me when I know something about something and I go on Wikipedia is if they're wrong. So I think appreciate, I think other people should appreciate it too, that you were able to catch and really try to bring more facts to the table and try to kind of correct, frankly, what's not like a super great job Wikipedia is doing right now, and that may just be that not enough people have gone back and changed it. So, community, that's a cue to our listeners to if they care, work on that and make some changes in Wikipedia. Where accuracy reigns. But yeah, we just I've been really happy that we've seen even more subscribers. We already hit another milestone recently, and I can't believe it. Like, we hit a milestone and then we got another bunch of subscribers after that. So it looks like everyone is really liking the show. We really love your comments. We got a bunch of great comments this week. It's also worth mentioning that we launched our official podcast, so the recorded version, where it's a good chance to go back and listen to the show as we started out. It's a good chance, I think, to compare and contrast versus how the show is now, and how Juras, you and I interact, and how we sound, and even the tremendous strides you've made with how you edit the show and the presentation. So
Right. You could find all of that on basically pretty much at this point everywhere. You can find it on
yeah,
Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts. I feel like there are a few more directories that we are not on as of right now, but I'm sure we're gonna hit those out of the water within the next week, I believe. So yeah, you could actually start listening to the show not only on YouTube but also on podcast apps, wherever you get your podcasts from. So if that's a more convenient way of consuming our content, then please do that as well. The episodes on those directories as of right now are scarce because we are only uploading 2 new episodes every week, so that may take a little while before the newest episodes are actually on those platforms, but we will get there shortly enough as well. And yeah, guys, thanks for listening. If you really enjoyed this content, then please subscribe to this YouTube channel. As Glenn mentioned earlier, go and check out the podcast apps. And as always, catch us on episode number 20. I mean, what am I saying? 47 next week. And until then, stay safe and peace out.